weeks ago. There was a podcast in Florida, and they put me in some cheap hotel, and it was dark at night, and I tripped over a pipe because I couldn't see it, and then I fell with my face on the asphalt. But by now it's recovering. So
Wow. Well, we just went live. Fans, I am here with a returning guest. He's doing podcasts and news programs all over the world, including the Joe Rogan Experience recently. He is from the Harvard University Astrophysics Institute. He is the head of the Galileo Project. He is the author of Extraterrestrial. He is the best expert on the Three Eye Atlas interstellar object, which is picking up again in the news. Professor Avi Loeb, how are you doing today, sir? And how is your face after this recent fall?
well, my face is great. The good news is that it's not an injury from anyone attacking me. It's just that I tripped on a pipe that was not visible because of the darkness when I came to a hotel. In fact, that was a different podcast called the Danny Jones podcast, and it just came out 2 days ago. Check it out. If you can notice the band-aid under my nose, then you will realize where it came from based on what I just told you.
Yes, you've been traveling to do podcasts as well. What is it like being a celebrity now? You've been traveling to NASCAR events. You've really kind of transcended being a professor, and you're actually beginning to get known in the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, titles don't mean much to me. I mean, I still feel the same as a kid that I used to be 60 years ago, growing up on a farm. And I'm just speaking the way I think, and people find it appealing because, I, the way I do science is like science of the people. I'm trying to explain where we are, what we don't understand, what we are puzzled with, and people resonate with that. So I was indeed invited to a NASCAR car race in Bakersfield, California, a day after the podcast with Joe Rogan, and it was because one of the racers put my image along with Three Eye Atlas on the hood of his car, and he actually taught me how to drive his car, and he wants me to go again and actually compete in Daytona. But my wife says no. She doesn't want me to take a risk on that. So I will probably not do it. But you are right. I mean, I was invited to a number of unusual events. For example, there was a gathering of celebrities and from Hollywood and CEOs just during this summer, and many important actors, including Margot Robbie and Adrian Brody and others were there and showed a lot of interest in the kind of work I'm doing. So I'm getting to know people. Just yesterday I had a visit by the president of the Templeton Foundation and his daughter to my home. I get hundreds of emails every day from all around the world. Many parents telling me that because of me, their kid is now interested in becoming a scientist. So I see that as the greatest reward that I can get to what I'm doing. And because I feel that my generation is not doing the best it could in resolving mysteries about our cosmic neighborhood, and my hope is that the kids of today will actually do better by becoming scientists. Not being too attached to their egos, not claiming the arrogance of expertise the way that lots of experts do right now, and instead showing the humility to learn, which is really at the foundation of science.
I was talking to you about wrestling before we went on. The NASA press conference, they reminded me of bad guy wrestlers when they did their press conference. Because I just wanted to go boo when they were saying where they were basically shutting down all claims and being so close-minded. What did you think of their
Oh
presentation a
yeah.
couple of weeks ago?
By the way, first I wanted to say that I very much appreciate your background coming from sports. I really loved sports at a young age, and I'm still good at it. I jog every morning at sunrise, about 3 miles. in the company of wild turkeys, bunnies, ducks, birds. And so I'm very much into sports, and I really enjoy that. Um, yeah, so unfortunately, the NASA press conference was more of a political act because they put the officials there who are not practicing science, and they just basically try to tamper down any enthusiasm about the anomalies of 3i Atlas. They didn't even discuss those anomalies, and they try to argue that it's just a comet from a different environment, which was a political message. Instead of them bringing, scientists engage in the analysis of the data, and also they showed us fuzzy images. That was pretty much the content of the press conference, which was very disappointing because at the same time, there were amateur astronomers providing us with beautiful images that had jets coming out of 3i Atlas, much more informative, with instruments that cost only thousands of dollars compared to the $1 billion spacecraft that NASA is using. Now, of course, it's understandable that the cameras that NASA was showing images from, they were not designed to look at an object like 3i Atlas, so the resolution was poor, they were jittering. That's fine, but they shouldn't have held this press conference in that case because it didn't serve any good purpose. They could have just shared the data without much delay, by the way. They delayed the release of the high-rise images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter by 45 days. They should have released it in a repository so scientists can use them instead of making a press conference with very little content. I should also mention that today NASA announced that the MAVEN spacecraft around Mars, is not communicating, strangely enough, with Earth. It went behind Mars, and when it came back, at the recently last week, when it came back into view from Earth, there was no signal of communication with it. So that's really surprising. It's 1 month after MAVEN, the same spacecraft was giving us data on 3i Atlas when it came closest to Mars.
So do you think there's some connection between that and 3i Atlas?
I have no idea, but it's it's an interesting coincidence that 1 month later it stopped working. There are two other spacecraft around Mars that NASA operates. One is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, from where we got the fuzzy image of 3i Atlas. Since then, a month and a half, almost 2 months passed by, and now we have an image from the Hubble telescope, much better, and it still shows an anti-tail. In other words, the glow, the halo around the 3i Atlas, the halo of light, is extended in the direction of the sun. And what's different now compared to the first Hubble image, which was obtained on July 21st, is that the first image was when 3i Atlas was approaching the sun, approaching us. Now it's receding away from the sun. The direction of this anti-tail stayed towards the sun, and now it's opposite to the direction of motion. Previously, it was in the direction of motion. So it basically flipped orientation relative to the direction of motion when 3i Atlas came closest to the sun on October 29th.
Do you think that was really the best picture NASA had, the one that they showed at the press conference? Because that was a lot of waiting for a picture that was so blurry with all the money that we put into NASA every year.
Yeah, it was disappointing. Even more disappointing is that they held the data, according to them, because of the government shutdown for 45 days. If they knew that it's not a great image that will serve science much, they should have told us that there is not much to wait for. But instead, they had a press conference where they didn't have much to show for. And just a week and a half later, they took an image with the Hubble telescope that is far better. So the image of the Hubble telescope has a pixel resolution of about 60 kilometers, And that's very close to what the high-res image should have had if they didn't have jitter of the camera, if they didn't have blurring, but they didn't reach that target. So I would think that NASA should have desired to have a press conference after the Hubble image is taken, because then they can be proud of that. But instead, they showed us a blurry image and claimed there is nothing unusual about 3i Atlas. So, what's really the point about bringing this message and disappointing the public? And I should also say that other space agencies, did better. For example, the Japanese Space Agency, just a few days ago, they used an X-ray satellite to observe 3i Atlas just as it came sufficiently far from the sun, because they couldn't look within 60 degrees of the sun with their X-ray telescope. So they waited and just took an image of 3i Atlas with an X-ray telescope and had discovered X-ray emission. So this is the first time X-rays are observed from an interstellar object. And they immediately analyzed the data and reported the details of the detection. The same is true about the European Space Agency, that also released data from JUICE. That's a mission headed towards Jupiter, and they did it instantly. You get the sense that they really want to share with the public what they have, and they do it in a way that is informative and exciting. I don't understand why NASA is so bureaucratic and lacks this scientific enthusiasm that is driven by curiosity. There is one anecdote that I wanted to mention about JUICE. This is the mission heading towards Jupiter. It's on its way, and it came close. It went through a rendezvous with 3i Atlas just at the beginning of November. And 3i Atlas will get closest to Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. That's just in about 3 months from now. Guess what? This JUICE mission that is human-made will get closest to Jupiter in July 2031. So in about 6 years from now. So just compare them. It's obvious how fast 3i Atlas is relative to a human-made spacecraft. It gets to the target of Jupiter in just a matter of 3 months compared to 6 years.
I've been following several people who talk about this regularly, and there was one of them that today, after hearing about this X-ray image, that they're starting to come around, okay, maybe this is something like Avi Loeb has been talking about now that we have this evidence. Could you explain the significance of this X-ray image that has been released?
Well, I don't think it's, scientifically speaking, it reveals any new information, because what it basically amounts to is that the solar wind, these are energetic particles emitted by the sun. We know about it for many decades. The sun has flares on its surface, and it releases energetic particles that are escaping from the sun, and they create the solar wind, which is actually impacting the Earth all the time. The magnetosphere of the Earth stops it. So around any object, if there is any cloud of gas anywhere, the solar wind impacts on it, and it creates a glow in X-rays through a process called charge exchange, where the energetic particles are charged, and they, as a result of their bombardment of the gas particles, they charge those gas particles electrically, and then that leads to the emission of X-rays, because these particles are very energetic. So this is a process that was documented over the past 2 decades, measured in many instances, and there is nothing really surprising. We knew that there is a plume of gas around 3i Atlas. It was detected by the Webb telescope, and also the other telescopes, including SphereX, the SphereX Space Observatory. So we knew about this plume of gas, and now we are seeing it in X-rays because it's being bombarded by the solar wind. There is nothing really new about the signal that it tells us something that we haven't expected. What I really want to know is we see those jets coming from 3A Atlas, and we just don't know how fast they're moving and what is their composition. This is something we can learn about from upcoming observations, especially when 3 Atlas comes closest to Earth on December 19th. That's just a week from now, a week before the holidays. And then, if we measure the speed of the jets and their composition, we can easily tell the difference between the evaporation of pockets of ice, the sublimation of ice that may create these jets out of the illumination by sunlight, or thrusters that are technological in origin. They would have much higher speeds for these jets and very different compositions. So just by studying those jets, I think we can pretty much get a good sense of the nature of the jets, what is their origin, and whether 3 Atlas is natural or artificial.
We've been hearing actually in the news the past several days that we are extremely close to President Trump coming clean with some type of disclosure. Do you think that has anything to do with December 19th being next week and a potential black swan event, or is it just a coincidence?
I have no information about it. I would be extremely interested if that's the case, if there will be any new information coming from Washington D.C. I mean, obviously, the public in general is extremely interested in the subject, and it will change priorities that scientists assign to this subject. So if there is information the government has and are willing to inform the public about it, it would have a major influence on the way science is conducted in the future. And I very much look forward to it if it's real. I just have no inside information as to whether it's true or not. And I'm not sure what the source of this, these reports.
Well, the Daily Mail in the UK is reporting apparently there's been some inside information, and the betting odds are 98% that he is going to be disclosing something.
Well, I very much look forward to that, and I will be happy to watch it and provide comments on it when it comes out. And what is the context that they're discussing it? Is it UAPs or unidentified anomalous phenomena or something else?
I think he's just supposed to make some statement regarding the reality of UAPs, because Marco Rubio recently did some confirmation that they've actually found a craft, and he's pretty high up in command. I think he's third. He's pretty high up there in the government.
Yeah, no, actually, what happened was there was a documentary that came out, The Age of Disclosure, and in it, Marco Rubio was interviewed, but that interview is from 4 years ago, before he acquired the current position that he has. So I'm not sure how much he knew back then and whether he was just speaking more generally about reports that he heard about, but didn't actually witness any evidence. But it's quite possible the government has information that we are not aware of, and I would love to know what it is.
I actually heard a new interview with Elon Musk where he addressed UAPs. This has just been in the last few days. He thinks that UAPs exist, but they are black government projects, and he says you see no evidence of actual aliens. And to me, that's a better answer than he has been giving in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fundamental question about UAPs is whether they represent, either operations that some advanced technological projects are playing with, and those are projects within the US, and some parts of the US governments are not aware of them, or some obviously citizens are not aware of it, so they see unusual behaviors. Another possibility is, of course, that they originate from adversarial nations, um, and then in that case, if for example, if there are crash sites of equipment, then obviously the government would prefer those adversarial nations not to be aware of what we have in our possession, so they might label them as alien technologies just to confuse uh, anyone that doesn't really know what was uncovered. And obviously rumors or stories are not carrying much water. They cannot really be the basis for us to believe that there is any evidence for alien technology here on Earth. And we need to see the actual data evidence to make sure that it's not human made.
Here's a question that I've been asking you about here and there. Is your YouTube channel real? Because there's a lot of very strange YouTube channels popping up from you lately.
Yes. So in fact, over the past 2 weeks, I was alerted to that by fans, and turns out that indeed some creators made a YouTube channel with my name on it, where all videos are fake. They were produced by AI, and they basically they train those AI systems on content from my podcast interviews and television interviews. And some of my fans noted that the clock behind me is not moving. It doesn't change time in those videos. So you can easily tell that they're fake. Also, it happened over the past 2 weeks when I was injured, as I mentioned at the beginning, in Florida. And so it's clear that these are fake because they don't show the bruises that I had. So I assumed that they would disappear, but they didn't. And YouTube, I reported them to YouTube, and they didn't do anything. So then I decided, just a few days ago, I decided to put it in my daily essay on medium.com, where I have more than 110,000 followers that read my essays, and more than 5 million people that read my essays every month. And as soon as I put it, I got an email message from YouTube, and they asked me, why do I think that these videos that impersonate me, are violating my privacy? And I explained that they are representing content that I don't approve of, and and they are pretending to be me. And I said that I'm in consultation with legal advisors at Harvard University about whether to do anything about it. And I hold the creators liable for this false content. And so shortly afterwards, it was removed. Now, part of it is because I mentioned that there was a news report in Futurism, an article talking about it. And also I was supposed to appear the same evening on NBC News discussing this subject. So it would have been a lot of bad press for the YouTube not to attend to this matter. And so they released a formal statement that appeared on NBC News in my interview with Gadi Schwartz, that is now available on YouTube or available on my website as well. And basically, this channel of fake AI generated videos was eliminated. So that is very good news. But in the future, it will be very challenging to tell fake content from real content, because the AI systems will get better. You can sort of tell that this is fake just by watching me speak there and the way that I move my body. But in the future, it will be really difficult. And by the way, as soon as this issue, became public, I changed the tie that I'm using. Now it's blue, as you can see. And so anything claiming to be from recent days that doesn't feature a blue tie is fake.
You actually had a few comments today of people saying they like your outfit, believe it or not.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yes.
Well, it's all because of this fake video, and I'm now using a blue tie. And as soon as someone will make a fake video with me having a blue tie. I have another color, so you could easily trace based on the date and the color of the tie if it's real or not. And of course, you can always check what I say on medium.com, where that is authentic, that is genuinely what I think. There
And
is
this
a
is your website, right? It's Galileo website.
no,
Yeah. No?
no. You just put Avi Loeb at medium.com and you will see it.
Okay.
It's my essays. I mean, the Galileo website, yes, it is the website of the scientific project of Galileo. You can easily find my essays on medium.com. And that's where every day I usually post. In fact, yesterday I had two, and the day before, two essays where you can get updates about 3i Atlas and other matters. There is a huge amount of interest around the world, and I have many followers, a lot of fans, including people in politics. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with a senator that was really following everything I do and very excited to speak with me. And even when
Did Kim Kardashian ever message you back?
no, she didn't. I did, of course, correspond with many others, but no, she didn't get back to me. Obviously, my offer stands. If she wants to do, to be involved in a scientific research project, I'll be delighted to work with her. I mean, I think any person may enjoy the work of a detective. We collect clues, we're trying to figure out the truth. We don't assume anything, and we only report about things that appear to be real after we look at the data. And she can be a very valid member of my research team. I would be delighted to work with her. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see myself different than any person in the public, and I believe that all of us can be as curious and as soon as long as we are given access to the data, the evidence, we can reach similar conclusions because I believe in honesty and being straightforward, not in manipulating the public. So the approach taken by many scientists is that they just report to the public the final conclusion. They don't show them how the process is done, and that creates this false impression that science is work of the elite. And I don't believe in that. I think the public should be made aware of all the caveats, all the uncertainties, and the fact that scientists do make mistakes, because you don't always know in advance what the answer should be, so you sometimes make mistakes. We are all humans, and we should also listen to the public as to what are the interesting things for us to study. And if the public says we want to know if there is intelligence out there, we should attend to that rather than take the money from taxpayers and say, we will do whatever we think is right with that money, which is pretty much what's happening right now when astronomers declare that they want to look for microbes. They don't put any of the federal funding towards the search for technological signatures because they just decided that the priority should be given to microbes. And I don't think that's what the public wants. The public wants to study technological signatures. Maybe we have a neighbor and it would be easier for us to find it than to find microbes.
Where do you think SETI is at as far as studying technological signatures? Do you think
this is really interesting because for 65 years, SETI was engaged in looking for radio signals, which is similar to waiting for a phone call, but nobody called. Okay, we haven't detected an unambiguous signal. And on the other hand, there is a better approach that we can follow now, which is to search for any package in our mailbox. That's interstellar objects entering the solar system from outside, and maybe among the rocks there will be some tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor, some object that is manufactured technologically. And very strangely, the SETI community is opposed to discussing the possibility of technological objects near Earth. They do not allow any discussion about UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, in their conferences. They banned it. As of 2 years ago, they don't want any uh, even if there are published papers that were peer reviewed on this subject, and we have plenty of them within the Galileo project that I'm leading, they cannot be presented in SETI conferences because this community decided we don't want to discuss this subject, which is very strange, very strange. And I just find their behavior strange because they have a problem with discussing technological signatures near Earth in the form of objects that we don't understand. And I just think this is an even more exciting frontier than waiting for a radio signal. But and by the way, if you think about this more generally in the context of science, for example, we don't know what most of the matter in the universe is. We call it dark matter, and there are different ideas about dark matter. Some involve particles of one type, particles of another type, and the ways to search for those particles, are very different, and there are different experiments done for each and every possible particle. But you don't see conferences where a group of physicists say, we don't want to hear about another approach to searching for dark matter. You don't see that. You see that in the context of SETI. We don't want to hear about technological signatures associated with objects near Earth, while they are just focused on radio signals and also on microbes. And to me, it shows, that they are basically not really genuinely curious. They are trying to, virtue signal something. They want to show the rest of the community that they are really selective and careful. But why is it more careful to search for radio signals than to search for technological anomalies of 3I Atlas? I don't think it's more virtuous to look for radio signals than to consider the anomalies of 3I Atlas.
Where are we right now on the Loeb scale? Is it still a 4, or has it moved in one of the directions?
I did not update my ranking from a few months ago because we're supposed to get a flood of data in the coming weeks. And it makes no sense for me to say something now. Let's just wait after the holidays for the data as it comes in. And then I will update my ranking based on that data. And the main purpose of me bringing up this scale is to encourage scientists to take as much data as possible. Because then, if there is any clear technological signature, we will not be able to brush it aside and put it, shove it under the carpet of traditional thinking. So I really think that the only way for us to learn something new is if we are collecting as much evidence as possible, as many clues as possible. And only then we'll figure out what this object is. And, even if it turns out to be a rock, I would still say that discussing it in a broader context was extremely beneficial, because now there are plenty of kids around the world wanting to become scientists. And my hope is that they would do better than my generation.
What percentage of a chance would you say that we might not make it past the holidays?
I wouldn't worry about it right now because we don't have a clear signature that is technological. If there was, for example, if there was a maneuver that is very substantial when it came closest to the sun, then of course I would speak differently. But so far, everything that we see around it is still consistent with a possible natural origin, except the trajectory, which is still quite strange because it lies within 5 degrees of the plane of the planets around the sun. And this object will come to Jupiter on March 16th, 2026, at a specific distance from Jupiter that happens to be exactly the distance where Jupiter's gravity dominates over the sun's gravity. It's called the Hill radius, and that's where the Lagrange points are. And these Lagrange points are places where you want to deposit devices if you want them not to use too much fuel in order to stay there. We put the Webb telescope at the second Lagrange point of the Earth. So if 3I Atlas, was planning all along just to deposit some devices near Jupiter, that would be an optimal trajectory. Let's just wait and see, because in principle, if there are new objects appearing, near Jupiter after 3 Atlas passes by, then we can see them with the Juno spacecraft or other spacecraft that will get there, including JUICE. So if we see that, obviously there will be evidence for a technological origin of 3 Atlas. If not, maybe it's just a coincidence.
Here's a question from an engineer that I know. Do you believe that multi-dimension anomality or anomalies have not been thoroughly proven? Does it contradict Hilbert space or some ufologist findings of holograms plus 2D?
Yeah, I should say, as much as the subject of extra dimensions, spatial dimensions, is very popular right now in the mainstream of theoretical physics, especially in the context of string theory, as a way of unifying quantum mechanics and gravity, we have no evidence for that. It's a completely speculative idea. And there is no reason right now, based on all experiments, to believe that there are additional spatial dimensions in addition to the 3 that we know about. So this is completely speculative. And even if there were extra dimensions, the kind of the thinking about them is that they are curled up. They are not dimensions into which you can squeeze, a big object, because we don't see clear evidence for those extra dimensions. So you can't really live in these extra dimensions if you're a big object like 3 Atlas or something else. According to string theory, these are curled up, and they are on scales smaller than a millimeter, and so any object bigger than a millimeter would never be able to occupy them. So I would not assign too much credibility to the possibility that extra dimensions exist, and talking about interdimensional entities, that's really out there in terms of we don't have any clue that these things exist. You can talk about anything in this way. You can talk about all kinds of hypothetical scenarios, but there is no compelling reason for us to believe in it.
Yeah, I think we've heard David Grush say recently, as well as Anna Paulina Luna, a friend of yours, that there has been some evidence that UAPs could be interdimensional.
Well, UAP, no, I think they are misled by some people who suggest that, but there is no clear evidence that this involves extra dimensions. Now, UAPs could behave in anomalous ways, right? And but those, if you have some propulsion system that is very different from what we developed, it might look to you as if the objects that are being seen behave in strange ways. But I won't argue that there is evidence. I mean, maybe someone has evidence. I haven't seen it. Maybe the government has in its possession some information that I haven't seen, and it indicates extra dimension. But as of now, I haven't seen any clue that indicates that this is the case. And of course, if someone releases more information, then I can tell you what I think about it. But nothing was disclosed publicly that would indicate this way. And frankly, there could be many different other ways to explain anomalous behavior than imagining additional dimensions. I don't know why they're claiming that such evidence exists.
Now, I know you've heard about alien abductions, which, as you mentioned before to me before we went on, they usually happen after midnight. What are your thoughts on the alleged abductions that have been going on for, I guess, decades now, supposedly? And what do you think, if they were real, what do you think the reason for them would be of whoever's doing them?
Well, so the problem is that they are all stories told by people. If there was someone who would capture such an abduction event with their cell phone camera or video, I would like to see it. So it's the documentation that is lacking. Okay, and anyone can tell you stories. The question is, should we believe these stories? Even if there are real events, like, for example, a car crash, when the people who are involved in the car crash will give you very different accounts. So that means that if they have contradicting storylines, it's clear that one of them is not telling the truth. And it doesn't need to be the case that they're necessarily lying on purpose. They might, the human mind, the human brain is not reliable documentation device because it can be easily manipulated by things that happen quickly, and so the best way for us to judge if there's any reality behind it is to look at data collected by instruments, not by humans. And that is what, for example, the Galileo project that I'm leading is doing. We are using cameras. This is also the approach that FIFA takes when deciding about whether a goal was scored in a soccer match. They don't rely on what people tell them. They look at the cameras, the video cameras, and decide whether there was a goal or not. And so this is the more reliable approach. We know it also from the legal system that very often, there were examples of people that were sent on death row and were exonerated when the DNA test came along. And that shows that, the DNA test clearly falsified the testimonies provided by humans that these people are guilty. I mean, the humans were so insistent to send those people on death row that the judge decided to send them on death row until the DNA evidence came along. So, that shows you that humans are not reliable detectors. You can't rely on stories told by humans. You have to have some independent instrument recording those. And if any of the abductees were to use their cell phone to videotape the event, then I would be delighted to look at that video.
Yeah, it seems like if any of these stories are true, they have some way of paralyzing people where it's difficult to move to do something like that, or if they have weapons or cameras,
Well,
somehow they're unable to use them.
well, but then I would make the analogy with promises given about the next world. When we die, sometimes some religions offer us something, and the problem is that we've never seen anyone come back from those worlds after they die, and suing those religions for a false narrative. So I mean, humans are well known to manipulate other humans by promising them things that cannot be tested. In other words, if you promise that something will happen to another person after death and this person dies, we've never seen anyone come back and sue the false promise. And the same you can say about people who claim that they were abducted, but they cannot prove that. And so it's really all about undeniable proof, that anyone would accept if it were presented.
If any of the aliens are watching right now, abduct someone like Professor Loeb. I'm sure he wouldn't mind, and he would be able to pass the message along.
Well, be my guest. By the way, I would love to know what is out there, and I would also love to ride. And suppose 3 Atlas is just a rock, I would love to board it and just leave the solar system together with it, because it should be an amazing journey. It's moving faster than any spacecraft, and just imagine a journey that goes close to Mars, then Venus, then the Sun, then Jupiter, and then out of the solar system at a very high speed into interstellar space. This, if I had a limited time to live, that's the way I would like to. I would have preferred to spend.
Would you give up your life for that, though? If they said, we're taking you, but you're not coming back?
Yeah, I would be delighted. In fact, I asked my students at a class that I taught last year, I said, if a spacecraft were to land at Harvard Square and they would offer you a one-way ticket, would you do it? Would you go on that spaceship? And the students surprised me. They said yes, under one condition, that they will be able to communicate with their friends through social media and take selfies with the aliens. And I couldn't understand it, because In my experience, if I wanted to go to the top of the Everest, like the tallest mountain on earth, I would just enjoy the thrill of the experience. I wouldn't care less if the image of me being at the top of the mountain is shared with any other person. However, the students were willing to go on one-way trip only if they can share the experience. And I just couldn't understand it, because what's the benefit of sharing if you will never come back to Earth?
And one last quick question here, because I know you got to go, is if Amura Mura was a made object by some civilization, what is the one question you would ask the makers of Three Eye Atlas or Amura Mura, which I'm
Oh,
pronouncing wrong, sorry.
the question would be, what happened before the Big Bang? Because this addresses our cosmic roots, where we came from. But it also, if we knew the answer to that, we would be guided to develop a theory that unifies quantum mechanics and gravity, because just around the Big Bang, that's where the density of matter and radiation diverged. And that's where you need the quantum mechanics, in addition to the theory of Einstein that describes gravity. And so if someone has that understanding of how to unify quantum mechanics and gravity, they would know what happened before the Big Bang. And finally, if we knew what happened before the Big Bang, we could ask the follow-up question, can we generate the same conditions in the laboratory? And, that's just like having a recipe for a cake. If you know how the ingredients and how you need to put them together, then you could bake a cake. You just need an oven. And if we knew what preceded the Big Bang, we could design maybe a particle collider that would create the conditions that are necessary to make a baby universe in the laboratory. And that would allow us to basically understand the work of God, or to apply to the job of God. Because if you can create a universe, you're pretty much, you are at the top of the food chain. You can create a whole universe in the laboratory and everything inside of it.
Well, it's been a pleasure listening to you. I hope we get some more information as we approach December 19th. Fans can follow you on medium.com, Avi Loeb, and I'll let you close this off with whatever message you want to tell us. Thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful information.
Thanks for having me. My message is, stay curious. Don't listen to those who claim to be the adults in the room. There is a lot for us to learn about the universe that we don't understand right now. And that's the fun of collecting scientific evidence, trying to figure out things. And we can all be part of that.